The bridge of the Imperial dreadnought was silent as the stars dragged past its wide windows, stretching like white claws across the darkness. Dozens of alien officers stood frozen at their stations. Every one of them felt the same cold fear crawling up their spines. The warning lights on the main screen flashed bright red, and the ship's captain, Voro Khan of the Threx Empire, tried to keep his voice steady as he demanded another report. His words shook anyway. Something was following them. Something small. Something fast. Something human. The crew had never heard a human ship move like that before. Humans were supposed to be stubborn, bold, annoying, impossible to conquer, and hard to break in spirit, but they were not supposed to have ships that could outrun an Imperial dreadnought. Yet the tracker showed a single human vessel staying right behind them, holding distance perfectly, as if mocking every shift and trick the dreadnought tried. It drifted in the dreadnought's blind spots, then slid back into view whenever it wished, like a predator toying with its prey. For 3 hours, the Empire's greatest warship had tried to escape a craft 1/100th its size, and it had failed. Captain Voro Khan commanded the sensors to zoom in. The image sharpened until the human craft filled the screen. It was a small corvette, patched with armor plates that did not match, scorched black at the edges, with a single glowing engine pulsing like an angry heart. The human symbol painted on the side was simple, a white handprint. Not the military star. Not the fleet crest. Just a hand. A warning. The dreadnought's communications officer whispered that the human ship had once broadcast a message, only once, and had stayed silent since. The Empire already knew the message. Every ship had heard it. Every station. Every colony. 8 simple words, spoken in a calm voice that somehow felt more threatening than any battle cry. The human had said, "You took what was mine, I'm taking it back." Captain Voro Khan tried to convince himself that one human could not truly be a danger. The Empire had beaten humanity before. Yes, the humans had fought hard. Yes, they had destroyed fleets far greater than their own. Yes, they had refused to surrender even when it seemed hopeless. But in the end, the Empire had crushed their small colony. One colony. One planet. Nothing more. The Empire had taken the planet's valuable crystals, enslaved the survivors, and moved on. It was over. It was history. Except it wasn't. The human following them now was from that colony. The crew had confirmed that much. A man named Marcus Hale. A former captain from the United Terran Defense Forces. A man who had survived when the Empire raided his world. He had escaped the slave camps, stolen an old Imperial corvette, rebuilt it, and hunted the Empire ever since. Every ship sent to stop him had vanished. Every outpost he attacked had burned with a strange blue fire that the Empire still did not understand. For months, Marcus Hale had become a whisper of fear in the Empire's highest halls. Some called him a terrorist. Others called him a ghost. All agreed that he was dangerous and impossible to catch. Now he was here. Behind them. The dreadnought shook suddenly, not from an attack, but from the captain's own fears leaking into the crew. It felt as if the air itself had become thick. The engines roared louder than before, pushing the great ship to its limit. But the human craft stayed close, closing the gap inch by inch. It was not firing. It was waiting. Building pressure. Letting fear do the work. On the bridge, whispers spread. Why wasn't he attacking? What was he planning? Why follow a ship he could not possibly destroy with normal weapons? The dreadnought had shields strong enough to survive a full fleet barrage. A single human corvette should have been nothing. Captain Voro Khan ordered the weapons officer to arm all batteries. Every cannon, every missile, every torpedo on the dreadnought began charging. The ship hummed with deadly power, glowing like a sun preparing to flare. The captain shouted a warning across the entire vessel. Everyone braced for the first strike. But the human ship still did not fire. Instead, it spoke. A single voice cut through the dreadnought's speakers, smooth and quiet. It belonged to Marcus Hale. He simply said, "You know why I'm here." Everyone on the bridge turned pale. Captain Voro Khan opened his mouth to speak, but the human continued. "You destroyed my world. You killed my people. You made me watch. Now I return the favor." The dreadnought's sensors screamed as something impossible happened. Energy readings surged from the human ship, far higher than its size could hold. The Empire had never recorded such power from any technology. It felt like standing at the edge of a sun that was about to explode. The human ship's engine blazed white, wiping out the stars around it. Someone on the bridge shouted to fire all weapons. Another shouted to flee. A third dropped to the floor and prayed to a god that did not listen. Captain Voro Khan could not decide fast enough. His hands shook above the controls. Then Marcus Hale spoke again. "My patience ran out. Now your time has too." The human ship charged forward. The dreadnought's alarms reached a final, desperate scream. And then everything became light. For a moment, it looked like the dreadnought had been swallowed by a white star. The blast from the human ship struck with a force the Empire had never seen. Every shield layer on the dreadnought flared bright, cracked, and shattered like thin glass. The bridge shook so violently that several officers were thrown from their stations, sliding across the metal floor. Captain Voro Khan felt his breath crush tight in his chest as the light faded enough for him to see again. Smoke drifted through the air, alarms screamed from every wall, and the dreadnought's engines flickered with dying sparks. The entire ship had been hit by a single shot. One. And it had almost torn the dreadnought apart. The crew stared at their screens in disbelief. The energy signature did not match any known human weapon. It did not match any weapon at all. It felt more like a natural disaster than an attack, as if the human ship had opened a hole into a star and thrown that power forward. But even after such a strike, the human corvette did not fall apart. It drifted through the fading light, still intact, still glowing with that strange white energy. Captain Voro Khan forced himself to stand. His legs trembled. He demanded a damage report, but the officer closest to him only stared blankly at his controls, hands shaking. Half the dreadnought's shields were gone. Dozens of decks were breached. Entire weapon banks had melted. One of the main engines was offline and burning. And the human ship was charging again. Panic spread fast. The dreadnought's crew were trained warriors of the Threx Empire. They had conquered worlds and crushed armies. They were loyal, confident, and proud. But in that moment, every one of them felt small and powerless. If one strike had done this, what would the second do? The dreadnought's tactical officer shouted that the human ship was building energy again. The readings rose at a frightening speed. Captain Voro Khan did not hesitate this time. He ordered all weapons to fire, even the damaged ones. Even weapons that would explode if pushed too hard. Every cannon on the dreadnought barked to life, hurling bolts of blue plasma across the darkness. Missiles launched in waves, streaking like fire across the void. Ion torpedoes roared out in long, bright trails. The entire dreadnought became a storm of light, sending everything it had at the small human ship. But Marcus Hale was ready. The corvette spun sideways, its engine flaring. Somehow it slipped between the first lines of fire. Plasma bolts flew past it. Missiles locked on, then lost tracking as the human ship's strange energy caused their sensors to break. Torpedoes detonated early, confused by the rapid movement. The corvette danced through the barrage at impossible speed, weaving through the Imperial attack like it had predicted every shot before it was fired. The dreadnought's bridge fell silent again, but this time the silence came from pure shock. No ship that size should have been able to move that fast. No ship should have been able to avoid that much firepower. And yet the human craft came out of the barrage without a single new scorch mark. Captain Voro Khan felt a cold truth growing in his chest. They were not fighting a man with a ship. They were fighting a force of nature wearing the shape of a human. Then the human ship fired again. Another burst of white energy slammed into the dreadnought's remaining shields. The blast tore through them and struck the hull directly, ripping open a massive chunk of the ship's side. A fireball rolled across 3 decks. Bodies vanished in the flash. The dreadnought spun off course, engines screaming. Warning lights washed the bridge in red. The dreadnought was dying. But the human ship did not finish the kill. Instead, Marcus Hale opened a channel once more. His voice was still calm and steady, but there was something in it now, something colder, sharper, almost tired. "You're not my target," he said. "Your empire is." Captain Voro Khan swallowed hard. He asked what the human wanted. It was a desperate question, but in that moment he truly needed to understand. Why was this man doing this? What did he hope to gain? Revenge? Justice? Madness? Marcus Hale answered with 6 simple words. "I want you to tell them." The human ship drifted closer, its white engine pulsing like a heartbeat of pure rage. "Tell the Emperor," Hale continued, "that I am coming." Captain Voro Khan felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. The Emperor of the Threx Empire ruled hundreds of worlds. He commanded legions, fleets, and armies beyond counting. He was feared across the galaxy. But now, this lone human, this survivor, was declaring war on him. And after seeing what one man and one ship could do, the captain no longer felt confident the Emperor would win. Marcus Hale cut the transmission. The human ship's energy built again, but this time it did not aim at the dreadnought. Instead, it released a massive flare of blinding white light, not a weapon, but a burst of speed. In seconds, the human ship was gone, vanishing into the star-streaked void. Silence wrapped around the bridge. Captain Voro Khan stared into the empty darkness where Marcus Hale had disappeared. He felt something he had never felt before in all his years of service. He felt hunted. The dreadnought limped through space like a wounded beast, leaving a long trail of broken metal and dying sparks behind it. Emergency crews rushed through the halls, dragging hoses, patch kits, and injured soldiers. Fire suppression drones floated past in slow groups, spraying vapor over burning panels. The smell of melted wires and smoke filled every corridor. Even the ship's deep engines gave off a low, painful groan, as if the massive vessel itself was suffering. Captain Voro Khan stood in the bridge with a stiff, frozen stare. His hands rested on the edge of the main control table, claws trembling lightly against the metal surface. He had not spoken in several minutes. His officers waited, but none dared interrupt his silence. Every one of them had the same question burning at the back of their minds: had the Empire made a mistake in provoking humanity? They were supposed to be simple, weak, emotional, but no one on the dreadnought could forget the sight of the human ship cutting through their defenses like paper. A medic approached the captain, but Voro Khan raised one clawed hand, silently pushing the medic away. He did not want treatment. He wanted answers, and he wanted to understand what he had just witnessed. He finally asked for the closest Imperial relay station. The navigation officer replied, voice shaking slightly, that the nearest station was 5 hours away at their current damaged speed. 5 hours until they could make contact. 5 hours to think about those 6 words the human had spoken. I am coming for the Emperor. Voro Khan knew the Emperor well. The ruler of the Threx Empire was powerful, proud, and merciless. He did not accept fear. He did not accept defeat. If the captain delivered this message, there would be consequences. But that was nothing compared to the fear of ignoring the warning. Marcus Hale was not a threat the Empire could laugh away. The ship continued forward, dragging itself toward the relay station. In the lower decks, workers whispered about the human. Some said he had unlocked forbidden technology. Others said humans had discovered something ancient and terrible. A few soldiers believed Marcus Hale had made a pact with forces that were not from this galaxy at all. But one thing every crew member agreed on was simple: no ordinary human could do what he had done. As the dreadnought crawled closer to the relay station, the captain walked to the central window. Stars drifted by, cold and distant. He remembered how confident the Empire had been when it took the human colony. The humans had fought back harder than anyone expected, but they still fell in the end. The Threx Empire thought it had crushed a small fire. Instead, it had created a storm. By the time the dreadnought reached the relay station, the crew felt like survivors crawling out of a grave. The station greeted them with shock and confusion. Docking crews stared at the dreadnought's ruined hull, the melted armor, the blackened scars running across its massive body. No one could imagine what enemy had done this. A repair team approached the bridge in a rush, but Captain Voro Khan ignored them. He headed straight for the communications room, followed by 2 officers who looked like they wished they were anywhere else. Inside, he opened a direct channel to the Imperial Palace. The transmission took time to connect, and each second felt heavier than the last. When the screen finally lit up, it displayed the tall throne room of the Emperor. Silver pillars lined the walls, glowing with deep crimson light. And seated upon the black iron throne was Emperor Zulvarin himself, towering, proud, and cold-eyed. His voice rumbled through the speakers like distant thunder. Captain Voro Khan. Why is your ship damaged? You were on a simple patrol route. The captain bowed his head, but his throat felt tight. He explained everything. The human ship. The impossible energy. The attacks. The message. Every detail. His voice wavered only once, when he spoke the human's final words to him. I am coming. The Emperor did not move at first. His expression did not change. The silence stretched across the room until it felt like a blade hanging above the captain's neck. Finally, the Emperor leaned forward slightly. One human did this to my dreadnought? Yes, my Emperor. Alone? Yes. The Emperor raised one clawed finger and tapped the arm of his throne. A slow, thoughtful motion. He studied the captain's face as if trying to see whether fear had driven him mad. After a moment, the Emperor spoke again. Send me the combat logs. Voro Khan obeyed. He uploaded every sensor record, every camera feed, every energy reading. The Emperor watched the footage without blinking. When the first white blast struck the dreadnought, the Emperor's eyes narrowed. When the corvette dodged the full barrage, he leaned back in his seat. And when Marcus Hale said his warning, the Emperor finally exhaled. It was not a normal exhale. It was a low, dangerous sound. Interesting, the Emperor said softly. He turned his gaze back toward Voro Khan, his expression neither angry nor afraid, only calculating. This human. Marcus Hale. He has found something powerful. Something the Empire must take for itself. The captain froze. That was not the reaction he expected. "My Emperor," Voro Khan said quietly, with respect. "I believe this man cannot be captured." The Emperor gave a small, cold smile. "Everyone can be captured. Even humans." He lifted his chin. "Prepare to assemble the Imperial Hunt Fleet. If this human wants to challenge the Empire, then the Empire will answer with fire." Captain Voro Khan felt a chill run through him. He knew the hunt was beginning. But deep in his bones, he feared the hunters were already prey. The Imperial Hunt Fleet gathered like a growing storm across the dark edge of space. Ship after ship arrived from distant sectors, sliding out of warp with long blue trails behind them. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, scouts, and hunters formed tight formations. Their hulls glowed with the sharp red markings of the Threx Empire, each symbol a promise of power and destruction. Hundreds of ships positioned themselves around the massive flagship, the War Emperor, one of the Empire's deadliest war vessels. From a distance, the fleet looked unstoppable, like a metal tide preparing to sweep across the galaxy. But even among this powerful armada, fear whispered quietly. Every officer had seen the combat logs from Captain Voro Khan's dreadnought. Every crew member had watched the footage of Marcus Hale's ship ripping through shields that should have been unbreakable. They had heard the warning. They had felt the dread in their bones. And yet, none could refuse the Emperor's command. No one could disobey the call to hunt the human who had dared challenge the throne. Aboard the War Emperor, Emperor Zul'Varen stood on a wide balcony overlooking his fleet. His armor gleamed like obsidian, polished to a cold shine. Around him, his elite guard stood perfectly still. The Emperor watched the ships move into formation, but his mind was far from calm. Marcus Hale was a puzzle, one the Emperor needed to solve. How had a single human gained such a terrifying weapon? What ancient source had he uncovered? What technology had he awakened? The Emperor believed in one truth: power belonged to those bold enough to seize it. And he intended to seize whatever Marcus Hale had found. On the command deck below, officers worked quickly, preparing the fleet for departure. Admiral Croth, a dark-scaled giant of a Threxian, stood before a large holomap. His voice rumbled as he pointed at a glowing trail on the display. "This is the predicted path of the human ship. He moves unpredictably, but our trackers found traces of the energy he used. Nothing else produces readings like this." The Emperor walked down from the balcony. The officers straightened instantly, standing rigid like statues. He studied the map. The trail stretched across several systems, but one location glowed brighter than the rest, a dead region of space known as the Shattered Belt. It was a place of broken asteroids, twisted debris, and long-lost ruins. Most ships avoided it. Signals there often weakened or disappeared. Legends claimed the area was cursed, holding old secrets no one should disturb. The Emperor pointed at it. "He is hiding something there," he said. "Or he has found something. Either way, he returns to the belt again and again. That is where we begin the hunt." The order spread across the fleet. Engines roared to life. Lights flashed along the hulls. The formation shifted into a sharp spear shape, designed for fast pursuit and overwhelming force. Even damaged ships were sent, because the Emperor demanded numbers, power, and pressure. He believed that if Marcus Hale could not be killed easily, then he would be drowned beneath sheer volume. But deep in the Emperor's chest, a small seed of irritation grew. He did not like being challenged. He did not like being threatened. And he especially did not like a human, one of the lesser species, one the Empire considered weak, daring to strike fear into his people. Emperor Zul'Varen would crush Marcus Hale. Not just to destroy him, but to prove a point: no one defied the Threx Empire and lived. Hours later, the Hunt fleet jumped into warp. The stars stretched into white lines. Space rippled and twisted. The fleet vanished into the dark. But Marcus Hale was not idle. Far across the galaxy, inside the Shattered Belt, his small corvette drifted silently between spinning fragments of old space stations and broken moons. His ship's engine glowed softly, not with the wild power it had shown earlier, but with a calm, steady pulse. Inside the cabin, Marcus worked alone, adjusting a large cylindrical device attached to the ship's core. Its surface was covered in ancient symbols and glowing threads of energy that pulsed like veins. The cylinder hummed with power, creating a faint vibration through the entire ship. Marcus tightened a panel, then checked several readings on a worn display screen. The data showed rising energy levels, unstable but strong. He exhaled slowly, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He wasn't ready yet. Not fully. But soon. He lifted a small metal charm from the control console, a simple pendant with the symbol of his lost colony, 3 stars connected by a single line. He held it gently between his fingers. Memories washed over him. Faces of his people. His family. The day the Empire came. The screams. The fire. The destruction. The helplessness. He remembered his promise, whispered into the dust and ash of his world, "I will make them answer." His ship pulsed again, brighter this time. The energy within the cylinder reacted to his touch, almost as if sensing his emotion. Marcus checked the readings again. The power grew more stable. He nodded in approval. He was close. Very close. A warning light blinked on his screen. Long-range sensors detected something, several things, approaching fast. Marcus stood, walked to the window, and stared into the distance. Even through the thick field of broken rocks, he could see a faint red glow growing stronger. The Empire had arrived. He did not panic. He did not speak. He simply returned to the control chair, strapped in, and took a deep breath. The time for running was almost over. The time for answers was about to begin. The first Imperial ship slipped into the shattered belt like shadows sliding into a graveyard. Their bright red lights cut through the debris field, scanning every drifting rock and every broken ruin. The fleet moved slow at first, cautious, aware that the area was unstable. Ancient metal fragments spun in wide circles. Massive asteroid chunks drifted aimlessly, knocking into each other with dull echoes. Old station parts hung frozen in the void, their twisted frames like skeletons from long-forgotten wars. Admiral Croth stood at the front of the War Emperor's bridge, 4 glowing eyes locked on the sensor displays. His deep voice ordered scouts forward. Dozens of small ships spread out across the region like searching claws. They flew through cracks between asteroids and circled broken moons. The Admiral wanted every piece of information he could gather. He knew the Emperor watched closely, and failure was not an option. But what they found made no sense. One scout reported strange energy spikes, matching the readings from Marcus Hale's earlier attacks. Another detected sudden drops in communication signals, as if something in the area was eating their transmissions. A third scout claimed to see a bright flash in the distance, but when the Admiral checked the location, the ship found nothing but empty space. The belt felt alive. Watching them. Testing them. Inside his Corvette, Marcus Hale observed it all. His sensors picked up the faint ripples of the fleet as they pushed deeper into the maze of debris. He watched long red lines stretch across his screens as the Empire moved into attack formation. They were careful, but they were confident. They believed their numbers would overwhelm him. They believed they could trap him. Marcus leaned back in his chair. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp and focused. He knew this moment would come. The Empire always responded with force. Always with fear disguised as pride. But he had prepared. He had studied the belt. He had learned its secrets. And he had awakened something they could not understand. The ancient cylinder, his dangerous, glowing device, softly hummed behind him, pulsing with raw energy. Marcus checked its readings again. They were nearly perfect now. Stable enough for what he needed. Not for long. Not forever. But long enough. Long enough to show the Empire the truth. On the War Emperor, alarms began flashing. A sensor officer shouted that the energy signature had changed again. A wave of power rippled through the belt, passing through asteroids and ruins like wind through tall grass. The Emperor stepped forward on the bridge, his armor glinting in the faint light. What was that? The Emperor demanded. The officer looked terrified. We believe the human is activating something, my Emperor. What? The Emperor hissed. We do not know. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. His voice dropped to a cold whisper. Find him. The fleet responded instantly. Ships pushed deeper into the belt, moving faster now. Engines flared. Weapons powered up. Cruisers broke into smaller units, ready to corner the human ship. Fighters launched from carriers in swarms, zipping between floating debris and tight formations. But the belt fought back. Massive asteroid pieces suddenly shifted, as if pushed by invisible force. 2 destroyers barely dodged a collision. A carrier scraped along a drifting station fragment, sending sparks across its hull. The debris field grew more violent, more unpredictable. Sir! An officer shouted. The gravitational patterns, something is pulling the belt toward us. The Emperor's expression darkened. He is using the environment. Force your way through. Do not stop. The Admiral followed the order, though worry gnawed at him. The human ship had not fired a single shot yet, but already the fleet was struggling to stay in formation. Then one scout finally saw him. Contact. Human corvette spotted in Sector 7. Every ship turned toward the direction of the call. The small human vessel drifted calmly between 2 spinning asteroid chunks, its white engine glowing faintly like a steady heartbeat. It was not hiding. It was waiting. The Emperor leaned close to the screen, eyes narrowed. Ready all weapons. Surround him. I want him alive. The fleet tightened their formation like a closing fist. Dozens of cruisers moved in. Fighters circled like hungry insects. Carriers opened their bays. Destroyers aimed their cannons. The human ship was boxed in from every direction. Inside his corvette, Marcus didn't flinch. He touched the control panel lightly. The ancient device pulsed bright white. A ripple spread from his ship. The nearest asteroid cracked in half. Then another. Then dozens more. The entire debris field shifted around him, drawn into a controlled pattern. The rocks moved like pieces on a board, sliding into new positions with smooth, unnatural motion. The Empire ships panicked. Collisions began. A frigate smashed into a drifting metal fragment. A fighter squadron scattered as a huge broken station frame swung toward them like a falling tower. Communications fragmented. Navigation systems whined and failed. The human was reshaping the battlefield. Admiral Croth bellowed for the fleet to stabilize, but it was too late. The corvette's engine flared bright white. And then Marcus moved. His small ship shot forward with impossible speed, weaving between spinning asteroids as if he could predict every shift before it happened. The Empire tried to pursue, but the debris field had become a living maze, closing and opening only around Marcus's path. Every ship that followed found itself blocked, crushed, or forced to stop. It's a trap, someone shouted on the bridge. The Emperor clenched his claws so tight sparks flew. Marcus Hale was not trying to escape. He was drawing the Empire in. Deeper into the belt. Toward something they had not yet seen. Toward the secret he had awakened. Marcus Hale flew deeper into the shattered belt, guiding his ship through a narrow corridor of drifting rock. Behind him, the chaos he created grew louder with every passing second. Imperial ships crashed, scraped, and stumbled, struggling to break through the moving maze. The human's corvette, small and agile, slipped through cracks that bigger warships could never fit into. Marcus knew every spin, every shift, every dangerous opening. He had mapped this place for months. He had turned it into his fortress. The ancient device pulsed again, brighter this time. Its energy spread outward in waves, passing through rocks, metal, dust, and empty space. Each pulse made the debris field move more sharply, bending its path with unnatural precision. Marcus checked the readings, stable, but only for a little while longer. The device was powerful, but it was old and unpredictable. He needed to reach the center before it failed. He glanced once at the pendant hanging near the controls. The symbol of his lost colony glowed faintly from the reflection of the device's light. Marcus touched it gently and whispered something under his breath. A promise. A memory. A guide. Far behind him, the Hunt fleet fought to regain order. Admiral Croth barked angry commands, demanding the cruisers regroup and force their way forward. Many tried, but progress was slow and filled with danger. A destroyer lost its stabilizers and spiraled into an asteroid, exploding in a silent bloom of white and yellow. A carrier was forced to retreat after a giant station beam swung and crushed half its launch deck. Fighters were scattered, their formation falling apart like dust in the wind. On the War Emperor, the Emperor himself watched the feed with growing frustration. His jaw clenched. His claws scraped the armrest of his throne-like chair. He could not stand the idea that a human, one single human, was making his fleet look like fools. He is using something ancient, the Emperor growled. Some kind of relic. No human technology can do this. An officer nodded nervously. Yes, my Emperor. It matches nothing we have ever catalogued. The Emperor leaned forward, eyes burning. Then he has found power that belongs to the Empire. And I will tear it from his hands. But as he spoke, another alarm echoed across the command deck. The Admiral shouted into the communicator, "We've lost the forward scanner array. Something is blocking all long-range sensors." The Emperor demanded to know what it was, but no one could answer. The entire center of the shattered belt had gone dark to their instruments. The readings simply vanished, as if a hole had opened in the data. No signals passed through. No scans returned. The fleet was flying blind. Meanwhile, Marcus reached the center. He slowed the ship, letting it glide into a wide-open region surrounded by drifting fragments of old structures, broken rings, rusted beams, shattered columns, and hollow spheres. It looked like a graveyard of something that once stood mighty and ancient. But at the very heart of the space lay a huge circular platform, cracked but still intact, covered in strange symbols. The markings glowed faintly, reacting to the device inside Marcus's ship. He brought the corvette down, hovering a few meters above the platform. His hands moved quickly across the controls. The ship anchored itself in a steady position. Marcus stood and walked to the back of the cabin, placing his hand on the ancient cylinder. Its light was too bright to look at directly now. Almost time, he said quietly. He lifted the cylinder from its housing. It hummed deeply, resonating with the symbols below the ship. Marcus stepped onto the small lift platform, which lowered him under the corvette and down to the ancient surface. His boots touched the platform softly. The symbols along the ground woke instantly. The entire circle lit up with white lines that spread outward like veins. The device in Marcus's hands pulsed in rhythm. He knelt and gently placed the cylinder into a circular socket near the center. The moment it touched the stone, the entire platform shook. Energy surged up through the cracks. Light spread across the massive ruins, waking something that had slept for ages. Marcus stepped back, shielding his eyes. The ground vibrated harder, and a tall structure began rising from beneath the platform. It was like a giant tower made of crystal and metal, cracked but still filled with power. The air around it shimmered with heat and force. Behind him, the Empire finally broke through the maze. The War Emperor burst into the open region with dozens of ships close behind. The moment they saw Marcus standing on the glowing platform, they opened fire. Hundreds of red plasma bolts shot toward him like a wave. Marcus did not move. A massive pulse burst from the rising tower, forming a dome of shimmering white light. Every plasma bolt hit the dome and vanished, absorbed instantly without even a spark. The fleet froze. The Emperor stared in disbelief. What? What is that? Marcus looked up at the approaching ships. His face was calm. Tired. Focused. This, he said softly, is the answer your empire created. The tower reached its full height, and the dome expanded farther, pushing all debris outward. Ancient symbols lit up across the broken ruins. The entire belt began to shift. Marcus stepped forward inside the barrier. This is power you will never control. The Emperor bared his teeth. Kill him. But even as he shouted, new symbols lit up along the tower, and the white energy surged into the sky like a beacon. The Empire had found Marcus Hale. But they had no idea what he had awakened. The tower at the center of the shattered belt shone brighter than any star. White energy rose from it in long, spiraling waves, spreading out across the broken ruins. Every glowing line carried the same pulse, the same rhythm, the same force. It was the heartbeat of something old, something that did not belong to the Empire, or even to humanity. Marcus Hale stood inside the shimmering barrier, feeling the ground vibrate under his boots as the awakening continued. The ancient machine was fully alive now, feeding on the device he had found months before, growing stronger with every passing second. Outside the barrier, the Empire's hunt fleet tried to regroup. Ships drifted back into formation, but their movement was hesitant and slow. The white dome pushed against their hulls, warning them that brute force would be useless. Admiral Croth shouted for long-range cannons to fire, but every bolt vanished into the dome with no effect. Fighters swarmed forward, only to slam against the barrier like insects hitting glass. The Emperor stood on the bridge of the War Emperor, eyes burning with rage as the tower rose higher and higher. He refused to accept what he was seeing. His mind clawed for an explanation, something logical, something that fit his belief that he ruled the galaxy with absolute power. But nothing he knew, no weapon, no science, no history, could explain the storm of energy before him. What is this machine? The Emperor demanded. No one answered. No one dared. Inside the dome, Marcus placed his hand on the glowing tower. The energy coursed through him, warm and sharp at the same time. He felt history in the vibration, a story of a powerful species that had existed long before humans or Threxians walked the stars. This ancient race had built weapons of pure energy, machines that shaped gravity, time, and matter. They had vanished long ago, but the relics they left behind still echoed with their strength. His voice was steady. Your empire destroyed my world. You believed humans were weak. But you only looked at our bodies. You never looked at our will. He glanced up at the War Emperor as it floated just outside the barrier. The Emperor glared down at him, claws tight around the armrest of his throne. You wanted to take power for yourself, Marcus continued. So I took something first, knowledge, hidden in these ruins. Knowledge your empire never found. Knowledge that was waiting for someone desperate enough to search. The Emperor shouted across the communication channel, human. Whatever you think you have awakened, it will not save you. You stand alone. Marcus shook his head slowly. No, he said. Not alone. Never alone. The tower pulsed again. The entire shattered belt answered. The ruins shook and shifted, sliding into new patterns like pieces of an ancient puzzle coming together at last. The white energy grew stronger, swirling upward until it formed a column that pierced the sky. The Emperor's ship lurched backward as a shockwave hit it. The fleet scrambled to maintain position. What is he doing? An officer cried out. The Emperor stared, wide-eyed. He is activating a planet killer. Marcus heard those words, but he did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply pressed his hand deeper against the tower, letting the energy connect fully. It's not a weapon of destruction, he said softly. It's a weapon of truth. The tower released a final surge. The dome expanded outward in a blinding flash. It did not explode. It did not burn. Instead, it pushed through everything: metal, ships, mines. Every Imperial ship froze as the wave washed over them. Their systems flickered. Their engines cut. Their weapons died. One by one, the massive warships drifted, powerless and silent. The Emperor felt it too. A sudden stillness inside his chest, as if something had reached into him and pulled all his pride into the open. The ancient energy didn't destroy the Empire's ships. It revealed them. It exposed their presence, their intentions, their violence. It stripped away the layers of fear and force that held the Empire together. The Emperor fell to his knees. What? What have you done? He whispered. Marcus answered quietly through the channel, his voice echoing across every disabled Imperial ship. I used the one thing your Empire fears most. He paused. A truth you can't hide from anymore. The Emperor shook as he felt something he had never felt in his life, every life his Empire had crushed, every world they had broken, every scream they had buried. The ancient machine forced him to see it all at once. Not as numbers. Not as trophies. But as the truth of what he had built. The Emperor roared in agony. Marcus watched calmly. The tower pulsed one last time, then slowly powered down. The white energy faded. The dome collapsed. The shattered belt returned to quiet. But the fleet remained frozen, their systems locked by the relic's final command. Marcus looked up at the powerless Empire ships and spoke softly. I didn't come to destroy your Empire. I came to end its lies. He stepped back to his ship, climbed into the Corvette, and started the engines. The pendant hanging near his controls glowed one last time, reflecting the dying light of the tower. As he drifted out of the belt, the Emperor struggled to stand. His voice trembled with fury and confusion. Human. This isn't over. I will rebuild. I will find you. Marcus did not respond at first. He let the silence sit between them like a closing door. Then, with calm finality, he said. You had your time. It's over now. His ship jumped into warp, leaving the dead fleet behind. Across the galaxy, the truth he unleashed had already begun to spread. And nothing would ever be the same again.